As 1941 began, Turkey was right in the middle of the most dangerous chessboard of World War II. Germany, led by Hitler and winning victory after victory, believed that to checkmate the world, it had to eliminate the Soviet Union. For this reason, Operation Barbarossa was launched. The attack that began on land also needed support from the sea. The Black Sea and the Russian coasts were the key points of this plan. However, Turkey, a neutral country, refused to open the straits. The Turkish Straits, which had been one of the bloodiest regions of World War I, were secured in 1936 by Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey. During wartime, Turkey did not open the straits to any country. When the Turks refused to open the straits, a new proposal came from Germany. Germany offered a large amount of money and war supplies in exchange for the sale of the jointly built I-class submarines by Turkish and German engineers, but this offer was also rejected. Following this, Hitler put one of his crazy plans into action. By the order of Admiral Erich Raeder, U-boats belonging to the 30th Flotilla would be dismantled, transported by rivers and roads to the Romanian coast, reassembled there, and launched into the Black Sea. In this video, we will take a closer look at Hitler's secret submarines in the Black Sea and their crews, and witness their journey from the Russian coasts to the Turkish shores. Hitler saw the Soviet army as a rotten building and believed that, just like his decisive victory against France, he would achieve victory in a short time. At the beginning of the attack against the Soviets, everyone agreed with him. Nazi armies were advancing rapidly. Hitler was getting closer every day to unlimited resources. However, after a while, the war reached a balance. This balance worked against Germany and in favor of the Soviets. The Soviet dominance in the Black Sea had to be broken, but how? It was clear that Turkey would not allow passage in the Black Sea. Admiral Erich Raeder ordered the immediate transportation of 6 U-boats belonging to the 30th Flotilla. If everything went according to plan, the submarines could start sinking Russian ships within 4 months, and Canal. The submarines moved through the Wilhelm Canal and were brought to the city of Hamburg. They were then lowered into the Elbe River and reached the present-day Czech border. There, they were dismantled into parts and continued their journey eastward, partly by road and partly via rivers. Passing through Vienna, Budapest, and Belgrade, they were finally loaded onto trucks again in Romania and brought to the port of Constanta. The transfer process was carried out with great secrecy. At the port, the parts were reassembled, and on October 27, 1942, they were launched into the Black Sea. During this process, 16 fast attack boats, 23 mine-clearing ships, 6 submarines, and more than 100 amphibious landing vessels were also launched into the Black Sea from Constanta. From October 27, 1942 to August 25, 1944, 56 attack operations were carried out. More than 20 Soviet ships sank into the rough waters of the Black Sea. The submarines conducted very successful operations, but the same success did not come from the land forces. The land armies were sinking deeper into the Soviet quagmire day by day. The entry of the United States into the war shifted the balance further against Germany. The partial retreat of the German army on Soviet soil increased the attack motivation of the Soviet forces. The process was moving toward a point that Germany did not want at all. Under these circumstances, the submarines were also left in complete isolation. On August 25, 1944, Romania switched sides to the Allied powers and declared war on Germany. This meant death for the submarines. They were surrounded by the Soviets. 3 submarines were sunk in Romanian ports. The remaining 3 submarines disappeared in the Black Sea. Somehow, they needed to reach the Aegean Sea, but the Turkish Straits were protected by advanced systems. They began waiting for news from the government center. During this period, Germany contacted the Turkish government and offered the return of personnel and the sale of the submarines. However, as it was clear that the war would end with Germany's defeat, Turkey did not take the risk of purchasing German submarines and rejected the offer. They began waiting for news from the government center. During this period, Germany contacted the Turkish government and offered the return of personnel and the sale of the submarines. However, as it was clear that the war would end with Germany's defeat, Turkey did not take the risk of purchasing German submarines and rejected the offer. Finally, the submarine fleet commander, Admiral Karl Dönitz, gave the following order: save the personnel, sink the submarines, land on suitable Turkish shores, and try to reach the nearest German units. The order also included information about the Turks and instructions on how to behave toward them. Due to the necessity of communicating in Turkish, submarine personnel had even begun taking Turkish language training. 3 submarines came together side by side off Turkish territorial waters and held a meeting aboard the U-19 submarine. The meeting began on September 10, 1944, at 18 o'clock and lasted 2 hours. They discussed how to land, how to sink the submarines, and how to proceed after reaching land. They would land using electric and inflatable boats. No lights would be used. The crews of U-20, U-23, and U-19 submarines dropped personnel at the nearest and safest coves. Then, with a limited number of personnel, they returned to the sea, destroyed secret documents, and sank the submarines in the open waters of the Black Sea. The sinking locations were off the coasts of Karadeniz Ereğli, Sakarya Karasu, and Istanbul Auva. The young captain of the U-23 submarine, Rudolf Arendt, had drawn the cove where he would land in his notebook. Years later, in an interview, he showed this drawing along with many other details he shared. The drawing showed a cove located in Auva. Show today's footage. The small group of personnel who sank the submarines began walking on Turkish soil with 4-5 days worth of supplies after the rest of the crew reached the shore with light signals from their comrades. However, they were quickly noticed due to their clothing and appearance. Although Turks and Germans had fought together in World War I and were not allies in this war, the Turks did not treat their former comrades in arms badly. The local population, in particular, treated the Germans very kindly. Rudolf describes those moments as follows. At first, they didn't believe that I was German. Then I showed my Iron Cross medal, and they were convinced. The atmosphere suddenly changed. They became incredibly friendly. They offered me green figs and said, "Relax." Since it was the month of Ramadan, they did not eat themselves. I would learn the importance of Ramadan much later. After some time, the entire crew was captured by the Turkish gendarmerie and taken to Sapanca, where they would stay for a while. Interrogations began in the camps. During this time, the German soldiers were not treated harshly, with one exception. Lieutenant Colonel Ibrahim Erdaş told Rudolf Arendt, the commander of the AU-23 submarine, that he would shoot him if he did not reveal the locations of the submarines. After checking whether the lieutenant colonel was serious, Rudolf said, "Dear Lieutenant Colonel, a submarine commander whose country is at war never betrays his homeland." After these words, Lieutenant Colonel Ibrahim looked at Rudolf for a long time, then gave a military salute and left the interrogation. Not only Germans were in these camps, but also British and Italians who had taken refuge in Turkey during the war. After Sapanca, they were sent to the Konya and Beshehir camps. Rudolf recorded in his memoirs that he never forgot how Turkish soldiers offered them Sapanca grapes, and Czech soldiers offered them Sapanca grapes and cigarettes during the journey between camps. Yuritim A. Necip Seytemboy, a foreign ministry official serving at the Berlin military attaché's office, visited the prisoner camp, acted as an interpreter for the German crew, and listened to their requests and complaints. The food and salaries provided to them were covered by the Turkish government for a while and later taken over by the Red Cross after official procedures. After some time, the German military personnel were permanently sent to Beshehir. There, they did not live as prisoners but had a social life. They went to bathhouses and cafes, shopped at local stores, and even worked voluntarily according to their skills. One unforgettable memory for the German soldiers was shopkeepers offering them coffee. Years later, Rudolf Arendt told the interview team a Turkish sentence that stayed in his mind. "My son, 2 coffees for us." A malfunction at the hydroelectric power plant, which had been built by German engineers before World War II and supplied energy to the city, was personally repaired by the German soldiers, restoring the city's electricity. Developments like this helped build warm relations between the soldiers and the local population. German soldiers even began Turkish courses to communicate more comfortably with the locals. On March 1st, 1945, Turkey symbolically entered the war and declared war on Germany. Although this caused some restrictions for the German soldiers in the camps, The end of the war shortly afterward removed these limitations. After 1 year and 10 months, German submarine personnel were sent by special train first to Izmir. After being held there for a while, they were gifted olive oil to take with them. They were then sent to Italy aboard the ship Mersin and handed over to the United States according to agreements. From there, the soldiers were eventually returned to their homes. Years later, the sunken submarines were found by units of the Turkish Armed Forces Navy and turned into submarine tourism sites. During this process, U-23 submarine commander Rudolf Arendt was included in the project, and before his death in 2021, he saw his submarine once more and passed away as a friend of Turkey. Yes, friends, we have come to the end of another video. If you would like more detailed memory-based videos about World War II, feel free to write in the comments. Your likes and shares give me strength. Until next time, stay safe.